anyway, let's go to some least surprising things, and it's going to be the MVP race because, man, like I probably already said it, but this has been a real wide open year. It feels like, although tell me if you feel like I'm wrong. But looks like we got a lot of different candidates. Hasn't helped that some guys have, like Luka got hurt recently and he was on a tear. And Embiid, like I mentioned, Anthony Davis had that week where he went nuts and then he got hurt. And recently, as of this recording, Giannis had a crazy 5 games. So John, any MVP candidates you want to shout out or that have really stuck out to you thus far?
For a while, I was really hoping that Jason Tatum would just continue on this like dominant stretch, and I still think that he absolutely has a chance just because he's averaging over 30 points a game. He's got the record, in terms of not the record. He's got the best record in terms of like team, and that always kind of gets a shout when it comes to the MVP. But as of right now, if I had to pick one, I hate voter fatigue, and I feel like they might prevent him from getting it. But Nikola Jokic has led the Nuggets, once again, to the second best record in the NBA. Could be the best. And the guy is averaging an absurd stat line. He's averaging a triple-double, which is crazy. He's averaging 25 points, 11 rebounds, and 10 assists. Now, it's 10.1, so we'll see if he can hang on to that 10. All the while shooting 63% from the field and 39% from three. 1.4 steals per game and about half a block a game. I don't know how that's not an MVP stat line. Like Russell Westbrook did that as the 6th seed. So now imagine Nikola Jokic doing that as the 1 seed. Like that's what we're talking about here, people. And he's a big man. Like that, I don't know. I just think that Jokic is just having such an absurd year that if there was any year out of the last 3 that he truly deserves MVP, I think this is the one. And I don't know. I just feel like the narratives and the voter fatigue and all that kind of BS is going to be used against him because I've already heard the arguments that, well, guys like Michael Jordan like 3-peated MVP, and we can't put Jokic in that conversation. And like that's just such BS because that should have no impact on this year's MVP. Like none of the past should ever impact who wins MVP on this season. It should just be this year. So I don't know. I hope that Jokic doesn't get that kind of stuff because if he maintains a triple-double average and the Nuggets are such a highly seeded team, I find it almost impossible to give to anybody else, personally.
Oh, okay. So, John, do you feel like there's one outstanding one right now? I've only seen a couple of games, and obviously I've watched quite a few, of the condensed versions. Yeah, before we got hurt, I would have thrown Luka in there. And before I keep going too, I think the biggest thing that maybe why there's a little bit of voter fatigue is we do have like a lot of 30+ point per game scores as of right now.
Yeah,
But
even then,
maybe that also,
I feel like that actually hurts all the people who are doing it because it's like, wow, Embiid is averaging almost 34 points a game. But is that special if Tatum and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and Luka and like all these other guys are also doing it? And I'm not saying that should be the case, but I'm trying to think of how the voters will view it. And I think that might take away from that special accomplishment for all these guys because so many of them are doing it.
Okay. Just interesting food for thought because because once again I said Embiid's had amazing moments if he can stay healthy. And once again though, you could argue, like you said, I think for him he's got James Harden. You just mentioned 22 and 11 Harden's averaging, so that could go against Embiid in that race. Giannis though, especially the tear he's been on recently, but who knows how long that's sustainable. I'm surprised you were more sticking up for your boy Tatum because he also, like, especially off that finals, I think people underestimate, when you have such a long season and you lost the finals and you had that elbow injury and especially he's heavily criticized and then he's bounced back pretty well thus far to say the least. 31 and 31 points per game, still really efficient and still not being the main distributor, being one of the main distributors for your team too, and facilitators. And at times, like there's about 2-3 weeks ago, I would have thrown Shai Gilgeous in there or Durant, but then Durant got hurt. So
I want to respond to the Tatum thing.
Go ahead.
I mean,
sorry.
I would fight for him, but I it's tough for me because I need to be consistent in the way I viewed things. And like last year, I didn't think Devin Booker even deserved to be in the MVP conversation, because now I don't think that he's having as good a year as Tatum is right now. But like Devin Booker was getting that bias of like best player on the best team. And it's like, okay, but is he having a better year than these other players? I don't think so. And so it's like, I love Tatum's year. I think he's having a great year. I do think he's kind of slowed down recently a little bit. Like he's not having some of those monster performances he was having earlier. And I don't think it's necessarily like he needs to have those in terms of like the Celtics winning. So maybe for some of these other guys like an Embiid or someone else, if they don't have those performances, they're going to lose. And I think that just kind of hurts Tatum's argument a little bit because of how good the Celtics are. Once again, I'm just trying to think of how the voters view it. So I think as of right now, Tatum absolutely deserves to be in that conversation. But when I match up like his current stat line, resume, all that stuff to Jokic, the one thing that I give Tatum over him would be like his individual defense. But Jokic is not like some slouch on defense. I think that's kind of a misconception about him. Like he's not going to go lock anybody up, but he can hold his own in the paint for the most part. He's not going to do anything on the perimeter.
Not against Embiid.
Yeah, not against Embiid. Okay, well when you talk about like the best of the the post scorer, no, he's not going to stop Embiid, Karl Anthony Towns.
But they're far and few between.
Yeah, but like the average big man, he can hold his own. So I don't know. I just, but otherwise like he's averaging less points than Tatum, but he's got more rebounds, more assists. He's a far bigger impact in his offense in terms of like being the focal point. I don't know. It just, and like the record is basically identical. So that's the tough part for me. So I love Tatum. If he wins it, I think that he deserves to win it. But if I had to pick somebody else, I just can't pick him as of right now. Sadly, I truly wanted to win that because I think that like the perfect year for the Celtics would be Tatum winning MVP this year and then just winning the title. Because last year, Marcus Smart got the Defensive Player of the Year, and that's really what I wanted. I'd love for Robert Williams to get one eventually, but not this year. And so I don't know. Those other two things, though, if those could happen, I'd feel so fulfilled as a Tatum believer.
Embiid second, Luka third, Giannis fourth, and Tatum is fifth. And then it's a kind of a long odds increase drastically and then go to like Ja, LeBron, Steph, KD, and Dame. So
do you agree with that order? Would you put, so for me personally, just on that order, I'd put Jokic, Embiid 1 and 2, but I might put Tatum 2 or 3. I don't know. Like those are my top 3. I don't know. I know this has always been a hot take, and so many people disagree with me on this. I think Tatum is a better player than Luka. I think he has a bigger impact than Luka. I think Luka gets a lot of praise because he handles the ball a ton. I think if you put Tatum on the Mavericks, he could do some of that same stuff in terms of usage rate and all that. I don't think he'd have the same assist numbers, but I think he could average like 35 points a game or something. And so I don't know. To me, the difference is Tatum's defense versus Luka's passing. And I think that Tatum's defense is more impactful than Luka's passing because the difference in the passing is like 4 assists per game. So I don't know. I'd put Tatum over Luka. But yeah.
I agree because you mentioned too, and that Luka had ridiculous high usage rate too.
Yeah.
So like, yes, it is all on Luka, but like you already kind of alluded to, if you switch their positions, I think the Mavericks would probably be even a little bit better because you mentioned the defensive impact of Tatum than Luka, but that's just not what Tatum's asked. Tatum's not asked to dribble, basically for the Celtics, as we mentioned, very deep team. So yeah, I would probably, as of right now, I would put Tatum at 3. I'd put Luka at 4, but it's very close between Luka and Giannis. Giannis would be my number 5. But then, like, not very far. I would actually put LeBron over Ja, and I love Ja, but right now I'd put LeBron. Once again, Ja's got a better team around him, and I would put just barely. I actually wouldn't put Steph. I would put KD over Steph also, if we want to go down that a little bit more. And actually, I'd put Donovan Mitchell over Steph because he's also been having a great year. I know there's that 71-point game, but he's hit. And then, it's like sorry, I just wanted to bring this talking point up too. Like, Shai Alexander, really good year too. Like, I'll probably put him behind Steph, and probably behind Lillard right after him. But actually, but my heart, like, okay, if you were to ask me like what I think, chronological, what the media would do, I would put Damian obviously over Shai Gilgeous. But personally, I would put Shai Gilgeous over Damian. I think he's quietly becoming a superstar in this league. Like, once again, just outside of the MVP conversation, and that team's still developing their pieces as time goes along. But I'm not going to go further down. And if Zion played more, he'd definitely be in the conversation too. But he's been banged up a couple times. But when he has played, he's been amazing, as we've all seen. So just want to throw him in there. I like how LaMelo Ball has the same odds as as Bam and Devin Booker. Even though the Hornets are like one of the worst teams in the league, and LaMelo's missed like a whole bunch of games, but that's just like, do you have his numbers?
I mean, he's average. He's got good stats: 23 points per game, 6 rebounds, 8 assists. But he's played 26 games. Like, I just talked about Harden and like him averaging 22 and 11 and not being good enough to make the All-Star game, all that stuff. He's played way more games. They're not way more, but he's played like 10 games more than LaMelo has. So I don't know. I feel like if Harden and Jimmy Butler aren't even in the conversation for All-Star games, really, or they're snubbed because of the games, LaMelo Ball has the same amount of games as like Jimmy Butler does. So why would he even be in consideration? I don't know.
Well, according to, I'm looking at this off RotoWire.com. They get like a bunch of combined odds from like 3 different sites, and LaMelo has the same odds as those guys. So weird. But anyway, anyone else? I know, actually, never mind. You already mentioned that Jokic is your clear number one as of right now. I mentioned a bunch of the guys that I felt were in the conversation. Okay, so I do want to end off, this is a little bit off script because I forgot to add this earlier, in regards to surprises